Good morning, entrepreneurs. You are tuned into the Non-Corporate Network, the worldwide leader in entrepreneurship. You are watching Entreprenews. I am joined by my amazing co-host, Dustin Trout. And I'm Chaz Vandemotter, and we're excited to be with you today. The format of the show is that we will debate the top 6 trending small business headlines. We'll talk about the real facts. We'll talk about the real story, not the biased news that you might be used to hearing. The main goal here is to keep you woke. As a business owner, we want you to be ahead of the trends and be able to capitalize on what's new, whether it is related to the economy, whether it's related to shopping habits, small business, stimulus, all of it. Dustin, anything you want to add?
Got nothing to say. You introduced me, introduced the show. I think we're good to go.
Sweet. Well, the show isn't free to listen to. I'm sorry. You can keep your wallet in your pocket, though. You just got to subscribe to us on the podcast. Anywhere you can find us at Entreprenews, wherever you listen. Tell a business owner about us. Tell somebody else about us that this knowledge might affect or help them to stay ahead of the curve as well. But yeah, without further ado, Dustin, you ready to kick it off, the first story?
Yep. Let's go ahead and kick it off. So consumer companies pitch discounts, bargain products, and create cheaper brands during the pandemic. Unilever, Procter & Gamble, and other major consumer goods manufacturers are touting lower price brands, smaller packages, and discounts. People are on the go. They want smaller packaging. They want to be able to take things as they're out and about. Unilever, which markets food and consumer products in over 190 countries, said it's making sure that every market has a low unit price package and a cheaper brand. Overall, consumers are consuming 4% less compared to pre-COVID. I mean, this growing trend of cheaper products, smaller packaged goods. I mean, right. People want that freedom, but I mean, is it really that much cheaper? And I mean, what does this do to the environment?
Yeah, I mean, there's brands like Unilever and others mentioned here, P&G, where they have a variety of brands that serve the same product to different levels of the market, different segments of the market. And so, I don't think that it necessarily is any more cost effective at a low end versus a high end. It seems that the cost to manufacture is pretty similar across the board. It's more just about how they market these products. And so I think it's wise, right? As a business, like you want to capitalize on the trends. People want to pay less. You have to give them opportunities to do that. One way, put less product in there and, it's only $1 now. Even though it's, 2/3 as much as maybe the $1.50 version. And that's one way to capitalize on the trend. And yeah, the other thing is make another brand that serves a lower portion of the market. The trick there is, Dustin, is how do you manufacture something without incurring costs? It's a lower margin product, obviously, if it's less money. So, how do you cut expenses? Or do you? And it just becomes a less profitable unit, but at least people are now buying it. So I think that's the big question these brands are asking.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe that they're probably a little bit more profitable on the smaller items. I mean, it takes a little more work, even though they bring down the cost. It looks cheaper, but I'm sure the margins are a little bit more padded there. So I mean, right. That's good for the company. But what I worry about is that creating all these small little containers and all of that, it's going to just create more trash, and eventually there's going to be more regulation, which then is going to increase costs, and then we'll get into a cycle to where right. It doesn't even make sense to even produce that. And so but I am all for the creating other brands. I think it's going to be a growing trend in terms of spinning off different brands just to appeal to particular audiences. I mean, everyone says always niches are in the riches, and so instead of having marketing that kind of reaches everyone, this seems to be the trend.
Yeah, you bring up a good point with the waste. I think that's something that's you got to be cognizant of it. I mean, especially with these things notoriously not being recycled. Yeah, it's a tough conversation.
Exactly. So going on to our next story. So demand for pandemic-proof businesses is on the rise, and buyer confidence is on the rise as well when it comes to buyers purchasing businesses. So Biz Buyer Sells is a confidence survey on small business that indicates the demand for pandemic-proof businesses. And according to the survey, buyer confidence has reached an all-time high of 60 compared to 53 years ago. So 2,300 business owners were surveyed, and 57% found that they could find better deals this year. They attribute it to people needing to liquidate, needing cash, and whatnot. The average asking price of a business is around 300 grand, which is actually up 5%. Overall, right when the pandemic hit, M&A suddenly stopped. I mean, people weren't acquiring businesses, but that has come back and actually going to surpass here in October. And so really the biggest question is it really that people are looking for, to liquidate their assets, or is it that as we get into the pandemic and there's people looking for more tech, there's so many different tech companies out there. Are they just now becoming a bullseye for investors?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I think that a big part of this is that the negotiating power is shifting to the buyer, right? I mean, in a time like this where cash is king and bigger businesses are the ones with cash, they're going to be able to dictate what price they want to buy someone out at. And, there's just not as many suitors. There's not as many people that are wanting to buy a business. And so whether or not it's pennies on the dollar, I think that just that negotiating leverage that these bigger businesses with cash have is obviously showing its head now. And, I know that some businesses are positioned well, but in technology, obviously, like Moore's law, every 2 years, computing power is doubling. What was great today is gone tomorrow. And so, you have a very small window of opportunity as a business that's looking to be acquired by a bigger player. And knowing that, I think it shifts even more leverage to the big business. Now that they know, well, you don't really have an option. This technology is going to be obsolete in the next 12 months. We're willing to buy you, but at this price, they're going to win those deals.
Yeah, and I just think that, instead of, you bring up a good point of, buying businesses for pennies on the dollar because of where we're at. But I really think that as consumer behavior has really shifted, to be more digitized, I think that's kind of opened up the eyes. I mean, there's so many small little SaaS businesses, yep, pieces of software that, they're abundant. And now I think they're in more of a demand because consumer behavior is shifting that way. And so I think investors are really seeing that. And most of the time they're young creators where a couple $100 grand seems like a ton compared to, someone that's built a business for 10 years that has some assets or whatever it may be that might be asking millions. And yeah, it might not be because businesses are struggling. It might just be because a different type of business is being bought and the owner is a little bit different.
No, I hear you on that. I think, probably a combination of both.
Yeah. So going on to our next story, bringing it back here locally. So Chandler prepares for the future of the airport and surrounding Airpark. So the FAA requires every 10 years for an airport to outline their expansion so that the FAA can plan flight plans. And Chandler's Airpark area employment corridor is the fastest growing employment area in the city right now. It is 9 square miles. And it is anchored by the Chandler Municipal Airport, which is actually the busiest general aviation airport in the United States. The Airpark is, really located next to freeways. It has tons of office area, tons of land, essentially. And recently, with the expansion, they want to bring more business, and so land. How to use the land has been brought up, and really the city is bringing it to the public on how to vote for it. But really, the biggest argument is how much is going to be used for business and how much is going to be conserved. That's really the biggest argument. And Chaz, do you think that they should be worrying about more jobs and building more business or conserving more land, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't need to tell you guys this. Arizona is a beautiful place. Obviously, we want to be mindful of these landmarks. And, I think that there needs to probably be a little bit more focus on like national park building and trying to figure out ways to really set, because you don't have this problem in like New York or something, right? Like there's no more untouched land. And here in Arizona, there's a lot of untouched land. There's a lot of land that just hasn't been decided. What should we do with this? Should we build a city on top of this, or should this be a place that's preserved? And so I think that, having these conversations after the fact that you already have a very successful airport built, make it difficult. You probably shouldn't be trying to figure that out now. We want to be building areas where we know we can expand, but it's tough to say no to this. Obviously, it's a a rapidly growing area. I mean, we see these Airparks, Scottsdale as well, is a very busy, industrious place. And so, it's hard to say, hey, this area of the economy is expanding rapidly. Let's not throw gas on the fire. So I think we just need to do so in a mindful way that's respectful to the, land surrounding it, but know that, this is going to really produce jobs. We got to be taking it seriously.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, it is, 9 square miles. It's not a huge chunk of land, but I think to your point, there's a lot of these discussions happen after things already in motion, where I think, if we don't want to end up like New York, where there is no more land, I think a bigger discussion needs to happen. There's tons of people moving here. So I think a broader discussion needs to happen at the state level on how are we going to use the land, knowing that, over the next decade, it's going to be a hotspot here of people coming in.
Slippery slope too, right? Like, we've already built the airport and now all we got to do is knock this chain link fence down. Yep. Like, it makes it a lot easier to be like, okay, yeah, go ahead and do it, versus, hey, we set this site up to not be touched.
Yep.
So, yeah, we'll see what happens, but hopefully we're having more of those conversations before the fact. Before we get into our next story, I want to mention that we are powered by an amazing company out here in Arizona. They rep the city and the state, and it's just cool to see a company like this doing so well. State 48, amazing clothing inspired by Arizona. Dustin, anything you want to mention about State 48?
No, the awesome clothing, super comfortable, helping tons of businesses out here in the community, partnering with a lot of local nonprofits, and they're just an overall great brand. Make sure to check them out. Make sure to stop by. They're over in Chandler, and they are downtown as well. And so awesome staff. Make sure to check them out. State48.com.
Ride by the Airpark, see what's going on there. Stop by State 48. Sounds like a good day. All right, getting into our next story. Zoom's end-to-end encryption has arrived. Zoom is now letting both free and paid users secure their meetings so that only participants, not Zoom or anyone else, can access their content. Zoom says that this is supported across its Mac, PC, iOS, Android apps. There's a little green shield that'll show up in the top corner to ensure that you are secured end to end. This comes off the backs of a little bit of a controversial story from Zoom, where they were kind of caught red-handed sharing their data with Facebook and really just kind of pulling as much data as they could off of the people's conversations that were having Zoom meetings. And so, I think it's a good practice. Obviously, we're starting to see this with, Messenger being end-to-end encrypted, obviously your texting and Apple products being end-to-end encrypted. Now Zoom getting into the party. Does this set the precedent for other companies, Dustin, to focus on end-to-end encryption and take this data collection process a little more seriously?
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, the bigger companies are doing it. Someone like Zoom, they do it. I mean, it's just going to kind of from the consumer perspective, it's going to be a must from any product. And, going back to just overall data breaches and everything like that, I wonder when, regulation is going to be passed to where there's a minimum threshold that however you define it, I'm not in that space. I wouldn't even know how to define it. To where something like this needs to be in place. But, the second you start forcing that, the barrier to entry rises and the cost to actually innovate goes up and you have less innovation. But no, I think it's a good move on their part. I mean, there's so many companies that are built on the back of taking other people's or other companies' data. I mean, there's, tools that we mentioned before this that literally, I mean, it's they teach you how to sell a little bit better, and they go into something like this, Zoom, and they just listen to conversations and transcripts and take it all. And I mean, they're a $1 billion company. And so,
Gong is a $2.2 billion company now, built on the backs of analyzing, conversations that people are having over phone calls. I mean, it's the same thing. And it's like, is it right for Zoom to be able to say, hey, pay $20 and then I'm going to rip all your contacts, all your calendars, all your emails, listen to all your conversations and create this profile of data around you and how you use our product. And I'm going to sell that to somebody else and make more money off of you without you even knowing about it. I think that's just a flawed business plan. And that's not something people want to have in 2020. And so, I think more and more companies are going to have to bite the bullet here and know, like, yeah, I can't just do what I've been doing and just stealing people's data from under their nose. But it's like, why don't we have a precedence for companies like Garmin or Target or these companies that have been breached? Like, my Zoom meeting is now safer than my consumer data. Like that,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to make much sense to me, kind of backwards, but hey, at least our Zoom meetings are safe now, apparently. Well, getting into our next story, Postmates teams up with retailers on delivery in Los Angeles just in time for the holidays. Dustin, it looks like now on Postmates, if you're out in LA, you can purchase from stores like Estee Lauder, Home Goods, Parachute Home, Buck Mason, other luxury brands. Dustin, can Postmates keep up with Instacart? Is this a good pivot for them, moving a little bit away from the food delivery space that, they kind of trailblazed and now are seeming to be in like fourth place behind Grubhub, Uber Eats, DoorDash? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think it's good. I mean, the more competition, the more innovation that's going to happen because you got to steal the consumer. Whether they can compete with Instacart, I think they can. I mean, they're just expanding, and I think this is in the overall direction of the consumer where they want more stuff to be delivered and delivered right now.
Yeah.
I never understood why you'd just go to one industry when people want their whole buying experience. To be more digital and to be delivered. So it's like, I can get my fast food, I can get my medicine, I can get lumber, I guess, if it's on there. But basically all the things that I need to get that I'd be out and about, I can get it all through one company rather than having to set up orders and coordinate with 4 different delivery services. So I think it's an overall great move, and they're just going to take up more market share. It'll be interesting to see how they do compete. As you mentioned, they're the number 4. So, I think it's good for the consumer, which I'm a huge proponent of. So it'll be fun to watch. What do you think? Do you think, they're doing this to maybe get bought out, or, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, that's exactly what they're doing. It's very obvious to me that is exactly what they're doing. Is how can we be more defensible? We're obviously not going to take down the 3 big boys in the food delivery space. That business model isn't super defensible either. Instacart is the one that's doing this in the verticals that they're now getting into. So they're kind of crossing the wires a little bit and saying, we're going to sit in between Instacart and DoorDash and these other companies where we're going to serve boutiques. We're going to serve. And I think that their MO is like, let's go into the smaller market areas where there's not a whole lot of opportunity for these other businesses, maybe in like Tucson, like random places like that, they do well. So it surprised me that they're going after LA. But yeah, this is really something where it's like they're a $2.5 billion company, and there's going to be a bidding war between Instacart at $17 billion and DoorDash and Uber Eats. Uber Eats trying to buy Grubhub. Uber was trying to buy Grubhub. So I could see maybe them trying to buy Postmates. I mean, it's really all about market share at this point. So they're probably just trying to, spread their wings as far as they can, increase that valuation as much as they can, Dustin, so they can get a little cash back.
I mean, that's good for the consumer. Then they're going to be doing a lot of things just to acquire customers at a very expensive rate, and just trying to do everything that they can. Which then it's going to set a precedence for the industry, which then other companies can't go back on, or it's very tough to once the consumer has their expectations set.
That's very true. I mean, and they've been around, man. They were like one of the first to do it. They're like the Skype of video conferencing for the food delivery. Yeah. Skype. See what happened with Skype. Getting into our last story, bring it back to Arizona one more time here. Kindergarten enrollment in Arizona drops during pandemic. This is crazy. It seems like fewer parents in Arizona are sending their kids to kindergarten. It is optional here in Arizona to send your kids to kindergarten, and enrollment is down 14% compared to last year. This is crazy to me. 14% is not, 1%. This is a significant amount of people. And the CEO of Expect More Arizona, a childhood education company, Christine Thompson says, in kindergarten, students are learning their letters, they're learning phonics, all the baseline principles. If we have 208 on the table here, Dustin, and we're working on our education in Arizona, what does this say that 14% of kids are not getting into kindergarten compared to last year?
It blows my mind that it's optional. I did not know that until today. But I mean, I don't think it's a matter of the education system. I think it's a matter of the pandemic and think it's just people are worried about getting their kids back to school. I don't know if vaccine is gonna be what helps, assure people and send their kids back, or what that may look like.
Yeah.
But it is a very large number, and it's very worrisome. But I mean, and even then, I don't know if more money is going to help bring that back. I mean, again, have to figure out what the root is of this 14%. I mean, is this 14% just going uneducated? Yeah. Are more people homeschooling? I mean, it would be awesome to just get to the root on why this 14% of people are not enrolling their kids into kindergarten.
Well, it's crazy because I learned how to read in kindergarten. And so coming out of kindergarten into first grade, if you just don't have those skills that are taught in kindergarten, like no wonder we're a little bit behind in Arizona if kids are coming straight into first grade with no reading experience yet. And you think about this, Dustin, you got 207 on the table. You got 208 on the table. 208 is supposed to bring in between $2 and $4 billion of revenue. It's specifically for education. I mean, 207, we don't even know how much that's going to bring in, but I would venture to say probably about 300 million, if not more. So we're looking at almost $5 billion on the high end, $2.5 billion on the low end of revenue generated for education. And we have, less and less people going to school. Yeah. Like, how does that work? Or people going to private schools? Like, where are you going to spend that money if nobody's going to school?
Yeah. And I mean, that you bring up a good point. It's if there's all this extra money coming in, how do you spend it? But I think we just need to get to the root of it. And I really do think that it's because of the pandemic. And
I can see it being vaccine related. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, the moms are used to getting their kids vaccinated at the young age and everything like that. And if this whole scary thing is out there and their child isn't vaccinated, they don't want to run that risk. And I mean, there's a lot of families here in Arizona that are multi-generational households that, the grandma does live at home. And so there's probably a worry there that, their kid can bring something back, and
that's a good point. And, the other side of it too is like, what's going to happen with the public school system? Are people just not going to go at all? And now it just becomes standard to have homeschooling because, compared to a Zoom meeting for your schooling, like might as well be homeschooled is my opinion on the matter. But I mean, a lot of interesting stories here. I'm looking back at them right now. I think it's interesting. I mean, I'll tell you, I'm super fascinated in how people are going to create, or these businesses are going to create more like brand collaborations or come up with new brands downstream for lower income. It's going to be very tricky how they market it, right? Because I mean, it's essentially the same formula, do a different flavor of shampoo, and we'll just call it this, and it'll be 50 cents less. And so, I mean, I think that a lot of businesses are going to have some very interesting boardroom conversations to figure out how they can kind of fill that white space at the bottom of the kind of price range.
Yep. No, I love seeing that the mergers and acquisitions are coming back, and because I truly do believe that it's not because people are trying to liquidate because they need cash now. I think there's a whole new sector that's opening up to investors that because of consumer behavior shifting that a lot of good stuff is happening. So
M&A is the American dream, dude. Exactly. I think the more that's alive, the more, our startup community is alive. But thank you guys for tuning in again. It's not free. You can put your credit card down though. Just check us out. Entreprenews, anywhere you find us, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We're all over the podcast stuff too. So just type in Entreprenews. You can find us. Tell a business owner about us. We want to keep you guys woke. But again, this is you're tuning in on Corporate Network, the worldwide leader in entrepreneurship. This has been Entreprenews. Dustin, anything you want to say to the people before we let them get back to work?
No, good to see you guys on a Tuesday, getting caught up, and you'll see our sweet mugs tomorrow.
Sweet. See you guys.